Hello everybody, welcome to the beginner armor stand tutorial. And when I say beginner, I mean absolute beginner, as in I don't actually really know much of anything, because I'm going to be going through how to get the armor stand book and what each page does. So if you're a bit ahead of that, there might be some stuff in there that you don't know, but you know, there's another tutorial coming for you. Just another one. It's fine. I'll see you over in the future. So the first thing you need to know is, how do I get the data pack on my server in the first place? The first thing you need to do is to go to the Vanilla Tweaks website, and that is vanillatweaks.net, as you can see up here. And you want to pick and choose your data packs. And make sure you've got the latest version that you're on. At the moment of recording this, I'm on 1.15. I'm sure at some point it's not immediately released, okay? So there's a lot of prep work to be going in, so you might not get 1.16 immediately when we switch over, but at the moment 1.15 is there and it works, okay? And the one you want is this one. You can pick any of these, by the way. That's entirely up to you. It's your choice. You're allowed to do whatever it is you want to do. So, but this one is the one that you need. And I would probably pair it with probably player head drops. And then you just download them, okay? And then once you've downloaded them and made sure you've got all the files, you go to an installation process. And I'm not going to say it's easy, but it is step by step, and they do talk you through it. I'm not going to go through each and every one of these steps. All the instructions are there. All the sources are there. Just make sure you do whatever it is you're supposed to be doing. Now, before we go any further, there is one thing that you guys need to know, and that is that this armor stand data pack will never work on Bedrock or Pocket Edition, okay? There are some armor stand posing stuff in Bedrock, but sorry guys, you're on your own, I'm afraid. This is purely a Java-driven data pack. Now, the first thing you're going to need in your armor stand journey is the book. Now, you need a writable book, and you need to put or whatever you choose to write in your armor stand book. This will disappear, so don't worry about it being stupid. Okay, so sign that, and then you capitalize statues, and when you sign and close, there you go. You get your statues version 2.6. Now, do be careful to capitalize it, because if you don't capitalize it, you'll just get a lowercase book titled statues. It's really important the capitalization is in there. I'd like to take a second to thank all the people that are responsible for the book. Without this, my life would have been so much less interesting. Thank you very much. This is the point where people start getting confused. They've got the book, it's all installed, it's fine. And then they look at it and they go, I can't do this because of look at all the numbers and all the I don't know what's going on here. And there are pluses and minuses and XYZ values. And I know those are important, but I don't know why. That's what this video is here to help you with. Now, one helpful trick for beginners that I only recently learnt is that lecterns can be used with the book, and it still affects any armor stands you're using it on, just as it would as if it was in your hands. And here is our first armor stand. We shall call it Percy, the penguin. No, I'm not that much of a troll. It's Percy the parrot. We're fine. We're fine. Okay, and so I'm going to go through page by page, bit by bit, step by step. So the very first page of the book. This doesn't really tell you much. However, you can flip over to a page if you really want to. So if I wanted to go, for example, the mirror flip page, I would just do that and it would take me automatically to where I was. However, oh yes, and these purple circles tell you what's going on if you get confused or you forget. Now, the one that I do use regularly on the front page is this green check target button, because if you press it, it will tell you what armor stand you're currently going to be using, and that's a function of where you actually are in the physical world. So if I, for example, had another armor stand here and I was stood here, I don't know which one of these two I'm affecting currently. Check target. It's this one. Okay, so anything I do while standing here will affect this one, but not this one. However, if that one moves away slightly, that sometimes gets affected. So now I'm affecting this one because I've pushed that one slightly further away. Tends to be that the closer you are to an armour stand, the more likely you are to affect it. All right, so the second page is where it gets interesting, and a large proportion of your time is going to be spent on page 2. Now, the first bit is every single armour stand, whether you move it up or down or not, turn gravity to no. And the reason is, if every time that the world loads your armour stand, it has to constantly check where it is. If you've turned gravity off, it cannot fall. Therefore, less calculations have to be done around its position. So just by default, turn every armour stand piece gravity off. But we'll get to locking like right at the end. But locking is very important. If you haven't locked every single armour stand, you're causing lag. So show base plate. So that's this thing down here, and you can turn that off and on. Anything that's organic, you want to be turning that off, okay? Because obviously, show arms, yes, show the arms. Arms are good, particularly on things that have arms, okay? So I think those are fairly self-explanatory. Small stand, no is you keep it this size and then this size. This is the main way that you can change the sizes of objects, because you can force people to have things in their hand, like so, and that's it, it's small, and then you can embiggen the object that they're holding. But I'm going to take that back now. It's my pop chop. All right, gravity, I've already said, should be no on everything, and the reason why is because you can then start nudging things up and or down, but we'll get to X and Y values in a minute. Stand visible, yes, no, no, turns it invisible. Only things it's wearing and holding and its head will then be visible. So all the woody bits of the armour stand, so all of those bits will disappear if you choose no. And so will the base plate. So you don't have to click off the base plate and then click off the wood. You can just do that with just making it completely invisible. Display name, yes, no. So if I had a name tag, I could then name it, and because it won't automatically display its name, so you have to give it the permission to display whatever name that you choose. And that's the first page done. That was easy, wasn't it? The nudgening. This is the nudge page. Now, this page terrifies people, and I can understand why, because it involves maths concepts and graphing concepts, and that's just scary. But, okay, the way I deal with it is to know where you are in the world, and for that you require F3. And now, if you go in that second block of text and you go down to facing, okay, and it tells me I'm facing towards negative X. Now, I know that this direction is negative X, which means that this direction has to be positive X. So if I want to move it in negative X, I send it this way. Positive X, I send it that way. I've also got here as positive Z. Shut up, I know. All right, so here's Percy. Now, if I wanted to push Percy towards negative X, which I know is that way, okay, I would then go here, and on this top bar only, I would push him negative X. And that pushes him about half a block. Now, if you look at the numbers here, each of those numbers is how many little cubes here it's pushed. Now, if you go across here, there are 16 little cubes in a block. You can see them in the texture, okay? So 8 is half a block. So if you push it 8, you're pushing it half a block. If you're pushing it 3, you're pushing it those tiny little 3 there. And if you're pushing it 1, you're pushing it one of those little blocks. That's what those numbers mean. They're not arbitrary numbers. They are actually the pixels on the block that you push it. Okay? So that's what those numbers mean. So you don't have to worry about that and try and figure it out anymore. That's what it means. Okay? Now, I would also push it, positive Z is to the left. and I pushed it positive Z. So you can usually see by its feet. If I push it one thing back to push it to negative Z, brings it one little square across. You see? It's all logical. It's much more logical, you think. Now, that is the absolute position. Okay, so that is where it is in the world and what directions it will go in. Okay, now there are easier ways to do this. Now, I'm going to give you a secret. I ignore relative exact because I myself am not 100% sure what it does. Now, what it says is relative aligned. I don't know. You know what? I just can't. So I'm just going to tell you what I know. Okay. The relative exact I ignore entirely because I don't understand it. Relative aligned is easier. Now the X and the Y value is obviously up and down. Okay. As if we were with graphs. And the relative aligned. Now, this is where things get a little bit wacky. Okay. This is related to where you are in relation to the armor stand. I am in front of the arm stand. I am facing it. I want to push it to the side, to my left. Now that is the X axis. So you've got negative X to make it to push it to your left, and then positive X to push it to your right. Now the way I remember it is that X is a cross. So the statue moves across, okay, left and right. So if I do that, so if that's negative X, it moves left. However, if I turn to this side and I want to make it move left, see, that one I think is easier to understand because it's in relation to you. This one gets confused if there is a lot of armor stands present. So you need to be very careful on how you use this. But turning things left and right is easy because it's a cross. So if I wanted to make it go right, there. If I wanted to make it go right from behind, I would walk up behind it and I would make it go right. Okay, so the give me my book back. The X-axis is based on where you are next to it, and it will go to your left or to your right. And fortunately, it aligns up with what's in the book. Now, the Z-axis is slightly trickier to comprehend. Now, negative axis pushes it away from you, like so. And the positive positive Z-axis pulls it towards you, like so. And that is the same, again, whether you are on the side. Now, the way I remember this one, because it is all about little mnemonics, if you're very negative, people want to move away from you. If you're very positive, people want to move towards you. That's how I remember how to do that. So it's a very weird thing, but you know what? You get used to it after a while. And I would arguably use these as a beginner than use this, because this one is a lot more complicated to use and you have to know which direction is which. However, as you get more into armor stands, you'll be using the top bar a lot more. Of course, you always have to use the top bar if you're doing the Y direction. Now, page 4 confuses people outright because it's to do with rotation, and it's not just to do with rotation of the armor stand, it's to do with rotation of all the bits and pieces of the armor stand. Let me demonstrate. I'm going to turn the rotation angle to 45 degrees. Easy. Then I'm going to use this button to turn my armor stand 45 degrees to the left. Like so. And then what I'm also going to do is I'm going to adjust rotation to 15. Okay, and it'll say angle set step to 15. And then I'm going to turn it to the right. Now, that's a good trick to know. Moving your armor stand where you want it to go is a really, really important thing, because people aren't just at a diagonal or facing a direction. They have these little weird poses as well. It's a way to get things more lifelike. Now, I said things were going to get weird, and they're about to get weird. Okay, I've skipped ahead a couple of pages, but I wanted to demonstrate rotation as it affects every single body part. So this is what they look like right now. I'm going to do something to the legs. Now, remember our angle of rotation is 45 degrees. Now, let's put the right leg up X. So that's what a 45-degree rotation looks like. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change to 15 degrees, and I'm going to do something. Oh, by the way, it's as if it was its leg. It's how the book refers to it. So its right leg and its left leg, not as if you're looking towards it. Okay, let's move the left leg up by 15 degrees. You can see it actually changes the degree of rotation depending on what you look like. So if you're going, well, why can't I get the fine details? Chances are you've not picked the right rotation. Okay, so you must make sure you've picked the right rotation. Now, pointing is something that I don't use, okay? But you can point the head to the head, or apparently the head to the feet. This is a quick way to get your armour stand looking a little bit weird, but let's try it on a clean armour stand. Okay, so there are uses to this, and I have used it on occasion. I tend not to, though. If I wanted to move my arms quickly in big motions, I want to push my right arm towards the head, and it quickly moves it up towards the head. Now, give me my book back. That is a real hazard, by the way, if you're wondering. And then if I wanted to put that arm back towards the feet, it will put it down towards the feet. All right, so page 5. This is a fun one, okay? This is the one that you might be... this is one that I actually still come back to, even when I'm making my own poses. So this is important because it lets you choose what you want your arm stand to look like. Now, I tend to use these as bases for my armour stand creations, but you can just use these flat out as you like. So for example, let's do winning. So there's this guy. It's a nice little preset. It's even moved the head. A lot of them don't move the head. So if I wanted to do something like, let's go for my favourite, which is lazing, which is a nice sitting position. This is my favourite, and it moves the head. Okay, and then I can move that down and have it sitting in a chair or what I like, and then I can fiddle with it afterwards. Now, this one is walking. This is the one that I tend to use for most of my things that are moving around. But you'll notice that the head is kind of dead on, okay? So what I tend to do is I tend to move the head because the head is much more expressive if it's tilted slightly or looking up or looking down. Okay, this just looks a bit like a robot. And people are going, how do you get your so alive? I move the head. That's literally it. All right, pose adjustment. This is the one that people hate. Okay, this is the one that throws people continuously, and it still throws me. Now, the important thing is, if you, for example, let's do it with the head because it's pretty obvious to see. If you don't like what you've done to it, okay, so I did a positive X, so it's moved the head up. If you don't like it, the opposite will bring it back down to how it was. That is the most important thing. Now, this thing is trial and error, okay? And people are going, do you just spend time just messing around with it? Yes, that is exactly what I do. It takes a long time to figure out how each of these things affects, because I'm not going to lie to you, each of these X, Y, Z coordinates, hang on, let's find it, affects each body part differently. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go through the X and Y position for the head, the body, an arm, and a leg. Okay? Now, the things you need to know for an arm and a leg, that sometimes these are switched. It's not consistent. Okay? Well, I'm assuming it is consistent, but not in a way that makes sense to everyone. Okay? So that is genuinely trial and error. Okay? Which is, at this point, is when I would recommend you to have the lectern pose going on. So let's put down, so negative X for a head makes it go down. Positive Y makes it look to the left. Negative Z tilts its head one way, and positive Z tilts it the other way. Now, this is where the body is where things get a little bit wacky, because the legs don't follow the body. Now, if we could do that, we absolutely would. But this is where you have to start using armour stands in pairs. Okay, and I will talk about that in the sort of intermediate armour stand tutorial. That's not the place for it. My advice for you is don't mess with the body unless you've got 5-degree rotations or less on. Okay, so yeah, so a negative moves it forward, a positive will move it back. The y-axis twists it. I probably would recommend, again, body positions 5 or less degrees, okay? And only once. And Z does this. I've never seen a body do this, so I tend not to use it. But again, you can use it. Anything I'm saying you can do. But again, if you want it to match the legs, and sometimes you might not want that to happen. But if you want it to, then 5 or less degrees. Arms are similarly wacky. So X is forward and back. So negative X goes back, positive X goes forward. Okay, it might be difficult to see the difference. This one is negative Y, so it sort of twists it around its axis. This one is just normal. So the Y-axis is for twisting. And the Z-axis lifts it out to the side. That's all it does, or lifts it, or puts it inside the body. It depends on which way you want it to go, but it's basically like your up and down joint on your arm. And those axes are the same for the legs, pretty much. So that's X. We'll turn it back to attention. Attention is a really good, like, neutral pose. It's not the exact neutral pose, but it's close enough. And then Y spins it, and then Z lifts it to the side. But you'll notice, in combination, it looks a bit odd like that. And it does affect what happens to the clothes and everything. So like I say, sometimes it takes trial and error. Sometimes you find you just can't do it. And there are days where I find that I genuinely just can't do it either. So don't feel bad if it's just not working. Some things just don't. And you have to be accepting of those things. All right, so now comes the fun page of the book. This is the page that I spend most of my time on, okay? It's really good if you end up being a sculptor. You need this page. So we're going to give it a stand. We're going to give it some arms. And we're going to give it a block, okay? So now you can change the size of that block there, by changing the size of the stand, okay? I'm going to get into different sizes of blocks and how you can change it more a little bit in the future and a little bit in the intermediate section, okay? So, but we don't want that. We don't want that just now, so we're going to go no. Now, what I want is I want that block on the surface. Now, if I instead change that block to... I need to actually get rid of something in my inventory. Gimme, thank you. And change it for a thing. Same deal for a chest. But if I wanted a little chest to hide my valuables in, for example. Now, all you do is you go to the page and you do block on surface. And that's it. And that poses that armor stand exactly how it is required for being a block surface. But what if I wanted a smaller box? Now, this is where it gets funny. Now, you remember I said gravity no always? This is why. Now, if I wanted an even smaller box, I can make it a small stand. And then I would have to start budging this up in how you want. And then you'd have to sort of start messing with, like, nudge position downwards. Make it tiny to make it sit on the surface. But you wouldn't have it sit on the side. Now, if you get stuck and you're not sure, all you need to do is you need to, 1, check target. Shows you the position of the arm stand. And 2, stand visible. You cannot destroy a stand whilst it's invisible. If you need to get rid of something, it has to become visible. Okay, and then you get all your stuff back. Important thing to remember for this actually works for wool too. Okay, wool is counted as... Thank you. Wool is counted as a block. It's slightly, let me show you. Okay, so block on surface. It's counted as a block. However, you'll notice it's slightly above the surface because it's basically, if I put it into the block, it's counting the carpet as being here. Okay? Now, these next ones people get excited about. I'm going to give it an object, and I'm going to give it specifically a chop of some description. Now, what we're going to do is we are going to put that item on surface. All right, so this is what you want to do if you want your armor stand to be straight up, as if it maybe were propped up on a shelf, for example. This is what you want if you're showing your wares. If, on the other hand, you wanted a nice meal and the food lying flat down, you want item flat on surface. Because there you go, it's just a nice flat item. What more do you need? And it's the same deal if you wanted your tool to be flat on a surface. Let me show you. Just tool flat on surface. Ta-da! My pickaxe is now there and I can swivel it around however much I want. Now, this next one you have to be careful of and use incredibly sparingly, because once it goes up, it gets sealed and you cannot get it back. Okay, you just can't. It's impossible. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a trip hook higher, or a trip hook. What? You know what I meant. Shush. We're going to... No. It's got to be directly underneath. This one I think is actually a really useful thing, but you need to actually do it properly. Okay, so... show arms, give it my sword, and then I said there we go. You just hit the tool rack button, and then as you can see, it becomes there, and you can actually take this in and put it away, but you can't ever get rid of that armor stand now. It's locked. It's actually sealed in place, and we're going to go on to sealing and locking in a sec. All right, so this next page is less tweaking and more big changes, okay? So this is the Percy in a, what do you call it, a lazing pose, I suppose? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I am going to mirror the arms. So I can copy the left arm position to the right arm position. And you can see it's now mirrored that one. And if I do the legs, I can change the right leg. No, I can change the left leg to the right leg position. And you can see it's just mirrored it. Okay. Let's get back to lazing. All right. Now say I didn't want him facing this way. I wanted the pose on the other direction. All you do is you just flip everything. Flip one side to the other. And now he's doing that. Isn't that cool? I think that's just thinking, no, I need that on the other side, but I don't want to have to pose it myself. You just flip it, and then if you don't like it, you just flip it back. However, if I liked this pose so much, I could copy this pose. Copied. Easy. And then I can put down another arm stand with a different... I just put that on myself, didn't I? With a different head. And then I can just paste. And it's identical. And on this one, if I really, really wanted to, I can make it slightly different and flip it. That's what the copy and paste function is. Now, the paste function doesn't work, obviously, over logins. But also what you need to be very aware of is you can't copy locked armor stands. Let's talk about locking. Locking is very, very important. Now, whatever I do to this one, for example, if I just wanted the head to be up a bit more, that's fine. If I'm working on an armor stand here, I can accidentally mess this one up. And this is the thing that I think a lot of people have overlooked. When I'm doing my statues, people go, how do you pick what armor stand you're working on? It's very, very easy. Now, I can check my target and it lights up. what I can do is if I want to keep it like that, and in fact, if I'm working on a big project, you lock your armour stand after you're finished with everything. Lock. It's now locked. Now, if I were to go, for example, get really, really close to him, and I want to move the left leg up, it won't affect. And also, if I check target, can't target that one. So people ask what the difference between locking and sealing is. This is the one that's in creative mode. In this one, if I were to use a piston or put a bucket of water down, it would move. If you seal it, it can't be moved. It's there forever. It can't do anything about it unless you're in creative mode. So if you're on a creative server, great. You can use sealing and your arm stands will never move again. And that includes creeper attack. They won't get blown up or anything. They don't get shot by skeletons either, which is one that's happened to me before. But locking, all those things can still happen to it, but the position won't move. So don't get your arm stands wet. They're like gremlins that way. And that's a basic overview of the book and what each command does. Now, obviously, there are tips and tricks that I haven't gone through, and I'm thinking I'm going to do that in another tutorial in the future. So it's enough to get most people started, I think. So good luck and happy armour standing.